Okay, so this week on board Chitless, we are continuing the tradition of having crazy good guests, and this week we're honoured to be in the company of brothers Adam and Brady Sadler, formerly of Fantasy Flight Games, the legendary brains behind, to name just a few titles, Descent 2.0, X-Wing, Tannhauser, The Walking Dead, the Warhammer Quest adventure card game, and the upcoming arcade game-inspired Street Masters. So, Adam and Brady, thanks for coming on the show with us today.
Hey, guys.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks.
And we'll just get straight into the questions, if that's okay with you. Could you start by giving us some background on your gaming interests and what led you to board game design in the first place?
Sure. Brady and I both got into gaming around, serious gaming around the same time when we went to a game store looking for out-of-print expansions for HeroQuest, and we stumbled upon Warhammer. And that's kind of what got me really into games. I was always into miniatures. I'm a huge miniatures gamer. But playing Warhammer got me really into the hobby and interested in start designing stuff. And so I was working at a puzzle and game factory during college. And there was a need for a board game designed off of the Avatar movie IP. And nobody wanted to do it. Nobody knew how to do it. So I was like, yeah, I'll design one real quick. And of course, I designed a way too complex game for 8-year-old kids, so I had to simplify it quite a bit. But that was kind of my first exposure to actually designing my own game, and actually right out of college, I started working at Fantasy Flight Games, and that's kind of been doing it since then.
What's your story, Brady?
Yeah, I was going to say mine's pretty similar. For the most part, we kind of took like Adam mentioned, we were into Warhammer and stuff kind of in our late teens, but we kind of got away from gaming for a bit because we're both musicians at the time, and we were in a lot of bands, and we focused more on music and stuff. But it wasn't until I got into fantasy inspired European power metal and stuff like that, it got me back into that mindset. So I started writing a lot, and I ended up writing a book for the band that we were in. It was a fantasy band that had a big, huge background story, so I started working on the novel for it. And so that kind of got me into that mindset of gaming and everything.
Quick little fun fact for that, now that he's talking about that, is if you guys watch Brady's little videos on YouTube of him going through the overview of Street Masters, the music that was on the background is actually our band Lauren Guard.
Yeah,
nice plug there.
That's kind of
that's Lauren Guard for the listeners there.
Yeah. So the funny story behind that is I actually the heavy metal playing drums in a metal band got me back into gaming, and that I think it was my first introduction to cooperative gaming through Arkham Horror, the board game. That one blew me away because I didn't know what a cooperative game really was, and ever since that game I've kind of just been obsessed with the concept, and that's pretty much why we only design cooperative games, is because I only think in that way.
Right. No, it's interesting you say that, actually, especially with starting out with HeroQuest. I can remember that was my favourite ever Christmas, was getting that thing, opening HeroQuest and just seeing all the parts and being like, wow, this is this is as good a Christmas present as I'm ever going to get. And it was. Nothing has ever bested that.
Yeah.
And of course... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I think Brady got that for Christmas too, and my mom would run us through. She would play as Zargon.
She obliterated us, and I remember one night going to bed crying because she killed Stratmar in Quest 2, and I'm like, "Why did you do that, Mom?" And she's like, you just got to learn to play rough."
That's an important life lesson. She wasn't pulling any punches.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think I probably designed about 100 scenarios for HeroQuest as well, which I think probably fed into any sort of pretensions I ever had about game design as well.
That's interesting to hear.
Nice.
A lot of HeroQuest kind of dragging people kicking and screaming into the world of game design.
So, and interestingly enough as well, Arkham Horror was the game that got me back into gaming as an adult as well, because I sort of went off it for a few years and everything, and then I guess I found it stumbling through the internet and ordered it online, received it, and it was like, wow, games can do this now, and it was like an RPG in a box kind of experience.
Yeah.
So that leads you into the games that you've designed. I mean, you guys both worked with Fantasy Flight Games. Could you talk to us about this one's for Adam? Could you talk to us about the development of Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd edition, how that came about, and maybe tell us a little bit about the team that you were working with, because you were working with Corey Kay and Daniel Clark, and I mean, was Kevin Wilson still involved at that point?
Well, this whole thing was kind of an interesting story because I was very new at FFG, and the way I got introduced to FFG was actually through Descent. I bought this huge box from the game store, and it was just enormous. And I was like, oh, this is like reminds me kind of like HeroQuest. And so that's how I knew about FFG. And so when I went to go apply there, I talked about that, and they knew that I liked Descent. So when I got hired on, I was hired on as a producer. So I wasn't designing games. I was just helping, produce the games.
Who got you that job, though? Who got you into the door there? I forget.
Brady was working in marketing at the time, so he definitely got me. He kept bugging them a lot, saying, you should hire this guy.
Did Brady get you a job, or did you just turn up and they just thought he just turned up one day? It's like, you're in the wrong department, Brady. What are you doing here?
Brady has a bad habit of getting me jobs. So when I started there, I saw that I was working on Tannhauser as a producer, and they didn't have anybody designing it, so I was kind of dipping my feet into development work, and they noticed that. But I saw that Descent was on the schedule, and I was like, I was bugging my manager, please put me on that game. I want to be the producer for it. I'll do whatever I need to do it. And I got put on it, but the weird thing was there was no designer assigned to it. So it kind of I was sitting on it, and I started jotting down ideas and testing out some things, and I said I had tons of ideas for it. So I just kind of became the designer for the game just because of my desire to do it. I kind of just took it over. So I was working on that for a lot of my time at FFG. With the team involved, I kind of pulled Dan Clark involved into it because there was a lot of stuff designed for it, and he has a lot of experience with developing content for all kinds of games. He's really good at that kind of thing. So he was kind of my sounding board for most of the design. He was involved pretty much 80% of the time, I think, right from the beginning. Corey was kind of my manager at the time. I've had a lot of different managers there, but I think that he was my manager. But he oversees all game design at FFG, so anything pretty much goes to Corey. So I kind of met with Corey with kind of vision meetings, overarching direction for the design, things like that. So he kind of helped guide that. But me and Dan Clark probably were busy doing most of the work on that one. I didn't work with Kevin at all. I didn't see him much in the office, actually. He worked different hours, but I think I talked to him one time about some of his experiences playtesting Descent. But yeah, that was pretty much all that was involved with that one.
Okay, cool. Nice one. And Brady, so over to you now. Could you tell us a little bit about the development of X-Wing and how that came about? How did you actually find yourself on a gig with that IP?
Oh, that was pretty crazy. It's kind of an unfortunate story. I mean, it's not too tragic of an ending, but Jay Little, he was the main developer of X-Wing, the main designer. He designed the core system, but he ended up having a heart attack. Kind of scared everybody at the office. I mean, he pulled through. Okay, he's still dealing with some of the after effects, of course. Trying to recover from everything. But while he was out, that
was actually pretty early. That was really early in the design too. Like he just started it.
It was like a kind of a rule book. I mean, the mechanics were there, but the rule book was just kind of like the notes, it was laid out in a decent order, but pretty much Adam and I had to jump on to kind of reconstruct all these pieces and everything. So I was actually doing a bunch of expansions for the first edition of Mansions, and then I was helping do the first expansion for Descent. And as all of a sudden everyone put the roadblocks up and saying, hey, because I had to go out the door, like Star Wars was the big deal. So Adam and I just kind of took a break from all of our other projects and kind of just convened on that and helped iron out the rule book and just kind of put together how the scenarios would work in the game, and streamline their learn to play guide. And it was a kind of a crash course for us, just kind of to learn what had been done with the game up to that point. Because I wasn't actually involved with the playtesting early on. We just got involved after the fact. So it was.
I do remember Steve Kimball was the guy working on as a producer on that one, and he was kind of just drowning in X-Wing stuff because he was checking out dimensions on ships, getting all these things approved with licensing. He was really busy, and he just kept coming to me, Adam. I was working on Descent. He's like, I need your help with this. So I remember specifically at the very beginning having to lay out the movement templates in Illustrator, and I was like, I'm just guessing here. I'm not like a mathematician, so I hope these angles are like correct. But luckily, I was like, they stayed the same. That's cool.
Nice.
How daunting is it working with an IP like that? Because you guys have worked on Walking Dead as well, and so Walking Dead, Star Wars. There's a lot of sort of expectation out there for what people are going to get. Is it daunting?
It's funny. When it comes to that one, I get a lot of flack for this because I'm not a huge Star Wars guy. Like I've always liked it enough, but I've never been, oh my God, Star Wars. So for me, when I came into it, I didn't think much of it of that. But then again, when I
Sadler's the Sadlers, or that's not the Sadlers. Adam likes Star Wars just fine. That's Brady.
Send all the hate mail specifically to Brady.
It's Brady, to clarify. Brady doesn't like Star Wars.
Adam thinks Star Wars is very cool.
Yeah, cool is a good word for it. Yeah, I agree. But like when I came into something like Walking Dead, No Sanctuary, that's a little more daunting for me when I'm like watching every week, and I'm really into it. And so yeah, it does depend on personal taste. So I guess it's more about my own expectations as opposed to what other people are expecting. I want to, you want to make games fun for people, but I don't think too much about how they interpret the theme as opposed to how I think it should be. So that kind of helped me not get too worried about not too caught up in the IP.
Cool. Okay. Well,
I think there is a balancing act between working towards what the licensor is expecting, or like what they expect out of you, as opposed to what you think people would want to experience if they were playing that game.
Yeah,
but like for Walking Dead, I'm sure the licensor would have been okay with a competitive game where everybody's trying to kill the most zombies or something. But like, I think that fans of Walking Dead don't feel that way. That they feel like they're working together to overcome the zombie threat.
To survive.
Yeah.
Well, that brings a great question, which is which does come first when you design a game? Is it the mechanics or is it the theme?
Theme.
Yeah, almost always theme. I mean, there's been only a couple times where, like Adam and I will mostly butt heads on projects together, but like there are a few times I'll just design little small games by myself, and there's like one or two times where like a mechanic catches me and I want to roll with it. But almost every time we approach a contract design or something, it's usually always an IP or something involved, an established IP. So usually it's always how we want to interpret the theme into mechanics, because we never really approach a game to innovate, like, oh, let's make some innovative, crazy mechanic that hasn't been done before. We just want to focus on the fun aspect, the fun factor, and the theme being conveyed through the mechanics. So I'd say a theme always first.
Yeah, I think that from the Walking Dead, for example, I feel like we came out with something that was slightly interesting as far as mechanics goes, with the whole trust mechanic of the leader choosing an approach and everybody having to kind of either agree with him or disagree with him, and it could cause some stress. I haven't really seen that in games before. But we didn't really. That just kind of came naturally out of us messing around with ideas of how we feel the show works and would work in the game.
Interesting. So, I suppose that plays well with what you were saying before about you, especially Brady. Like, you prefer to play cooperative games. You like to design cooperative games. Is there any sort of stock mechanics that you're going to bring out? It's like when you start a game, it's like, right, this is going to be my foundation. Have you pulled anything in from like previous game designers that you really love? Or do you just literally start from a complete blank slate?
There's a couple instances where, I mean, it's kind of case by case, but particularly with our most recent design, that I'm assuming when this podcast goes up, the Kickstarter will be live. It launches May 23rd. But Street Masters was developed from a concept I had because I was a huge fan of Sentinels of the Multiverse. I love the fixed deck modularity aspect of that game. Wasn't a fan of the bookkeeping aspect, the tracking stuff, and I didn't like the lack of player scaling, really. So coming into what I wanted to do, the vision we had for Street Masters, that really played off of what I wanted a game like Sentinels to be. So I think it's pretty clear if someone reads the rules or looks at the game overview, they'll see the inspiration behind that. But it's still its own unique thing because it's not borrowing actual interactions. It's just kind of borrowing the product model and expanding upon it, adding the tactical element, stuff like that. So yeah, there are times where I'll take something that I know exists and I like, and I play myself and just do my own take on it.
I think for me, a very general mechanic that I generally use in games is dice. I always like dice. We try to have a lot of dice mitigation in our games to kind of make sure the luck isn't crazy. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm trying to think of games we've designed that don't have dice, and I think I can think of one recently. That's about it.
Which one?
I
don't want my name on that.
It's the All Fantasy card game. It was our first party game.
Oh yeah.
It was just cards.
I should know that one got like $80,000 on Kickstarter. I should know that.
That actually leads me into a point there about borrowing mechanics. Is we actually decided to retheme Warhammer Quest: The Adventure card game.
Oh, and right, yes.
Doing it. Yeah, so we're doing a version of that with Awful Fantasy called Epic AF, Epic Awful Fantasy, and it's pretty much the same game, but it feels way different because it's more of a lighthearted, funny theme.
Yeah.
And it was it was a lot of fun to work on.
Does that bleed into like your marketing strategy at all when it comes to Kickstarter? Then, have you got people that you've designed a game, you've kind of created your product, do you then pass that on to anyone else?
Usually, people approach us. Like we had for Street Masters, we were approached by a publisher that wanted to do it, and they liked our work. For Awful Fantasy, for example, the guys who run the Awful Fantasy Twitter page are guys we've known since high school. We actually have lived with them in a house once when we were in our 20s.
And they are all they're also twins.
They're also twins. Yeah. And so we've known them for a long time, and we did that Awful Fantasy card game with them as like just a fun little project because we wanted to do a simple card game that we usually design big games. We wanted to try to design some small, simple game that our family might play. And we also wanted to get some funny art. So that actually succeeded, did pretty well. And so we decided to take it to the next level and do an actual, like, a beefier game. And it lined up perfectly that, we want to do something else with Warhammer Quest since nothing's happening with it. So I'm going to bring it back to life and see if people still want more of it.
We were talking before about using mechanics from other games or types of mechanics and stuff, and I think at the moment it's fair to say that in the board game industry we're sort of standing on the shoulders of giants because there's so many great games and great game mechanic styles out there. Who are your favourite designers? Don't say each other, but like the kind of designers that inspire you, because they are, I mean, game designers these days are kind of... I think one podcast put it as they're the rock stars of the gaming industry. So who are your favourite game designers? Who inspires you?
I think just given what I play normally, I have to say Nate French. I got to hang out with him when I was at FFG. He mostly, I mean, LCGs. I'm not like a big card game guy. I'm not a Magic the Gathering guy, but because he did Lord of the Rings, which I play almost daily, like for the last 7 years, I've been playing that game. I have to give credit to him because that inspired me a ton, and I love the Arkham game. Him and Matt Newman did an amazing job on that. So I got to mention that one. I think also I have to mention Richard Launius, of course, because of Arkham. That really got me into it, and we're trying to collaborate with him on a couple different projects later this year. So that'll be like a dream come true. And I'll probably have to also mention Ignacy Trzewiczek just because of Robinson Crusoe, because that game, when that came out, I was just pretty floored by how great of a design that was. But yeah, there's a lot of other great designers that I'm probably just not thinking about right now. Every time I play a game, I find something that inspires me about it. Even if it's a game I don't enjoy, I'll still find something pretty cool that it taught me, So I'm constantly on the lookout for inspiration.
Yeah, I was actually looking at this question when you sent, when you asked this, and I was having trouble thinking of like specifics because there's a lot of designers. I like stuff they do, but I don't consistently like everything they do.
Yeah.
So then, it's not like something that sticks with me. I will say I definitely have to mention pretty much everybody who's worked at the Games Workshop Design Studio because I think they're the ones who pulled me into gaming, like in general, and have kept me, excited about games. And especially now what they're doing nowadays, I'm loving a lot of stuff they do. I think as far as specific designers, though, I'd probably have to say a friend of mine, Eric Lang, who I got to hang out with a lot when I was at FFG, and I've kept in touch with him over the years. He's probably one of the hardest working designers I know, and he's always fun to talk to, and he loves talking about music and everything. So I'd say he's up there.
Nice. So what is it like working at FFG then? Is there any sort of like secrets behind the velvet curtain that you can spell? Is there any games designers that are real jerks?
I don't know if I'll say any names on the air.
Again, you can't say each other.
Yeah. I think
Brady sucks.
Yeah, for the most part, I got to start in the marketing department, and it was quite small when I came in. There's about 5 or 6 people in the marketing department, and I interacted a bit with the R&D teams, the research and development. But the first year I was there, it was kind of a change of pace for me because coming into marketing, I have a good writing background, but I didn't have much of a marketing mindset. I love to write about games, so that's a great start. But I naturally transitioned into the R&D side because I just constantly wanted to help out with the creative aspects and stuff. So like when I was there, there wasn't something in place that was easy to transition around. And I think they tried to, like most game companies, probably have to try to set up barriers between, letting everybody go design games, make sure you have your focus area, like, marketing, for example. So I'm sure nowadays, since we've visited there a couple times since the whole Asmodee acquisition, so they've gotten things a lot more organized and everything. But when I was there, it was a nice environment. now that I work in corporate, I think I prefer that atmosphere as far as a day job is concerned, because when it comes to working on games, it's kind of a more personal experience. So working at a game company, it's a little harder to let things go because it's not for you. You're just helping somebody else make their visions come out, which is fine because, I mean, you get to work on games still, but I think I'm just selfish enough where I'd rather just go work at a day job and then have my games, be my own.
Yeah, I would agree. It was a great learning experience. We were there kind of early, so it wasn't as structured and organized as it is now. When we went to go visit the offices, it's almost like corporate now. It's like there's cubicles and it's just like very nice looking and everything. We worked there. There was like, bullpens of desks and people sitting around talking about Star Wars and, geeky shows that were going on.
I worked in a garage.
It was almost a bit of oversaturation though. Like if you have something that's a hobby of yours and you're around it all the time, sometimes it loses its luster because you're drowning in it.
That's it. Yeah,
and you kind of like, it loses the excitement sometimes. So when you're working on games full time, sometimes it can get to you and take the fun out of it. And I realized once we left and we have jobs that don't necessarily excite us, it makes us more excited about games. And, it makes us, we design games freelance on top of our day job. So we stay pretty busy, but we stay busy because, it's something that excites us and gets us, passionate about doing it.
Can we talk about your day jobs? What is it you do outside of board gaming then?
This will be easy because we both do the same thing. So after leaving FFG, actually, I got a job as a proposal, actually a senior writer for a proposal team at a corporate travel agency, and I did that for about a year in Minnesota. And then their biggest competitor actually headhunted me and got me a job working out of the Netherlands, but I got to work from home, so I moved back to Indiana here. So since then, I've been working remotely for different proposal jobs, but now Adam and I both work at a technology company. It's a cloud consultancy, and we work as we're writers on the proposal team, so we get to work remotely, and we have a pretty flexible schedule, so it allows us to do whatever game design stuff we need to handle. We can prioritize our day pretty well, so it gives us the freedom we need to keep doing this. We pretty much have 2 full-time jobs, but it works out.
It does sound like the best of both worlds there. You've got the security of the day job, but then the time to actually, or the freedom to be able to shift things around and get on with games design.
Yeah, I worked at before I got this job, I worked at a corporate job after I left FFG in a cubicle, and I was a manager of a team, and I pretty much spent my time doing nothing. Like, my team would run itself, and I was just, supervising them and answering questions. But I wasted so much time sitting at a desk, Now it's like, if you work from home, you can if you have downtime, you can just work on something else, keep yourself busy.
Yeah, it's nice working for a company that really encourages you to not try to find work. If there's downtime, they don't want you to find work. Take your downtime, because there might be times then you're super busy, and having that work-life balance helps make those busy times more bearable, because that you spent the downtime that you had earlier to either clean the house or do the dishes or something.
There will be times when I'll get an email at 10:30 p.m. saying I need to format this document tonight, so I'll be up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning working. Yeah. So there are times like that, but it's I think it's a trade-off and it's worth it.
Cool. So could you, when you are working together and you are designing games, can you describe your working relationship with each other? Who does the heavy lifting out of the pair of you?
It depends on the project, really. I think pretty much a consistent thing I've been seeing lately of our most recent designs is that Brady will throw together designs quickly, and then we'll meet together, and then I'll just start stripping stuff away that I don't like or whatever, and kind of picking apart what works, what doesn't. Because I think Brady gets excited and has tons of ideas and wants all these cool ideas, and I'm kind of like, I want one idea in this game. So, but I think, like, for example, on Street Masters, we were having trouble. We had like 4 different versions of this game before we came to an actual idea what we wanted to do with it. And once we hit that idea, I think Brady just went nuts with it. And now he's, Brady's like designing decks all day, every day. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, whenever you're bored, I might pick up something.
Yeah, I think the standard practice now is, we'll have a solid concept or a direction to go. Like that's like the biggest coordination aspect is like getting together and figuring out roughly what the direction needs to be. And from there, just because I'm antsy and I'm just impatient, and sometimes I can be a workaholic when it comes to stuff that I care like deeply about. So I'll design like 4 or 5 different versions of a game, and I'll know most of them are garbage, but it really gets the ball rolling, where like if you move something forward, you can like polish it off later, and if even if it doesn't go anywhere, you've canceled out one direction, so you can like focus on something else. So I know it's probably not the most efficient work style, but it seems to work best for me because it keeps my mind.
I think
turning,
it probably is,
keeps my
actually.
gears going.
You're sort of teaching yourself to fail quickly there and then recover and move on. I think that's a healthy method of development.
That's definitely my biggest weakness is if I'm thinking about something and I don't think it's going to work the way I want it to, I don't bother doing it. And so that I get stuck pretty easily on certain things, and then I can bounce ideas off Brady and okay, well, he's doing this, it didn't work. Now I see how it can work, and now we'll do it this way.
Nice.
Yeah, and the way that like it works out well is because I don't see and I openly admit all the time I don't see the end point all the time. I'm always focused on like what's in front of me. Mm-hmm. So like if I show one of my ideas to Adam, from an outside standpoint, he can easily say, well, this won't work down the road because of this or something like that. That I won't see that right away, or I won't see outside of my own little box that I'm working in. So so that really helps. I mean, and that really for Stream Masters that like really hit the. I mean. I'll just preface this by saying I'm going to talk about Street Masters way too much because I'm like the most excited about this game that I've been about any game I've worked on. That's like the perfect game we're working on. But with this one, it was 4 different versions of a game that I just could not make work, and I wanted to so bad because of the theme. And then we finally took a step back and like did our original approach, and it just clicked so easily. I probably wouldn't have gotten to that point without doing those 4 or 5 crappy games that Adam kept throwing down and burning in front of me.
So is it Street Masters that's kickstarting on the 23rd of May? Did you say?
Yeah. So 5 days from when this is recording, it'll be launched, and I'm antsy as can be.
What are your thoughts on Kickstarter as a platform then? Are you pretty pro Kickstarter, I take it? You've put a few games out on there and you've got a few more coming up?
Well, I've definitely backed a ton of Kickstarter games. I've kind of teetered off a little bit lately because I've just got too many Kickstarters that I just then ended up not playing and selling off. So it's like, okay, well, I'm backing too much stuff. I don't need this much stuff. But I think it's great for different reasons. I don't think there's ever a reason a publisher shouldn't kickstart a game, even if they're have the money to do it themselves. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense to just test the demand for it first and get the money up front. As far as working on games or Kickstarter, I'm not as big of a fan of it as I thought it'd be, because sometimes it's cool as a consumer to get a game and a bunch of expansions right off the bat. Yeah. As a designer, it's not always fun to design so much stuff up front. Yeah. When you don't know what's going to fund,
Yeah. Do you, as a designer, then, do you see Kickstarter as less as a sort of advanced order and fulfillment marketplace, and more as a proof of concept? Like, this is a really cool idea for a game. We need money to develop it further. Is that how you see it?
I think it's moved past that personally. Okay. Because I was probably not the earliest adopter. I think my first big game I backed was Kingdom Death back in. When was that? 2012 or something? Whenever that launched. So watching Kickstarter evolve from there. If you ever see a game that's kind of like a concept, it's almost like a joke now, where you're like, oh, look at this poor guy. Yeah. He can't get any graphics or some art together. So I think now it's much more of a social media platform, which I think is a good thing because it does weed out. I mean, those concepts. I mean, if they're good enough, they'll get there eventually. So you can't really feel too bad, because as long as they stick, because I mean, they have to kind of play with the big kids here. There's a tough competition. You got a lot of different games going up, so you got to at least have the graphics and the art and get to that point at least to show off some stuff to get people excited about it. So it's much more of a social media vehicle now to promote a game and to just build excitement around the release of it.
Brilliant. I feel like with as many game publishers as there are nowadays, they're always looking for games. So if you're a designer and you have a game that you want to publish and it's done, but you don't have the graphics or the art, there's no reason to not just pitch it to publishers, because someone will want to publish it, and they'll have the money to get some art, graphics, and make it look real good.
Brilliant. I suppose with the rise of Kickstarter as well, preceded a little bit was YouTube, and we've seen a lot of YouTube reviewers. There's a lot of social media reviewers. There's people like Shut Up and Sit Down on there, where they're quite influential people looking at board games and giving their opinions. What are your thoughts on the whole board game reviewing on video? Do you think it's a good thing for the industry, letting people see what's in the box beforehand, or do you prefer to people find their own games, find their own, make their own opinions really, rather than being dictated to? How do you see that whole thing?
I think it's a good tool to have for people that aren't sure about what they want, or like aren't sure, they think they might like something but they don't. I don't necessarily utilize them as much because I feel like I'm around games so much I could tell if I like something or not, and someone else's opinion isn't really going to change that. Sometimes I might want to see an unboxing to see what's all in there. But I have on my smart TV, I have YouTube app, and that's pretty much the only TV I watch by myself. Is I watch game channels, reviews, stuff like that, just out of because it's fun. I enjoy it.
I constantly have my feed refreshed. I'm always checking and watching videos. So that's something I think is crucial to the hobby because it constantly grows it. And as an example, like you might be familiar with the Man vs. Meeple channel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those guys are local to us. They're like right across the street from us. So I've gotten when we did our Walking Dead No Sanctuary video with them, they were kind of just getting back together, but now they're going full time. And now that one of the guys, he got to quit his day job and he's doing this full time now. Jeremy is, so that's great because it gives him the opportunity to do something like he loves, but he's also building this business that also helps. For example, we needed our Street Masters video done, so we had our publisher hire them to do the video for it, and so it just creates more opportunities for different people, but it also just in general grows the hobby and includes more people. So
yeah.
I think it's just an important aspect. It's good to see that it's becoming more popular and there's more channels to follow, and that's one of those cases where I think more is better.
I suppose it's elevating the medium, really, isn't it? People showing more of an interest in the mainstream can only be good for the community.
Yeah,
definitely. And just conscious of time here now, guys, so I'm just going to wrap it up with one last question, and that'll be what motivates you to design a new game?
Adam's going to say money, but I would say
mercenary.
That just because that's a factor does not mean that's the primary motivation.
No, usually for me, it's either a lack of a theme that I see is not being utilized in the hobby, or if I watch a cool movie or something, I'm like, oh man, that make a great game. Like for example, I played that. There's a recent game that came out on Kickstarter, V Commandos. It was recently released. It was a game that was kind of inspired by the old PC game, that Commandos Behind the Enemy Lines game. And I grew up loving that game, so when I played the board game, I'm like, oh my god! So I immediately wanted to go design like a card game that was like that, And even though it was a board game that I played that inspired me, it's just that kind of stuff. The theme always gets me. It's something nostalgic that came from my childhood. I want to recreate on the tabletop, and I think it's always going to be the main thing for me. Is just if I see a cool theme or some kind of cool scene in a movie or something.
Yeah, I do think theme plays probably one of the bigger parts of being excited about a game. As far as us signing on for different projects, we've kind of learned after a while doing this freelance to not take on as much stuff, especially if it's other people's projects, helping out with small things. Basically, you stretch yourself too thin, and then you have contracts come up that you need to focus more of your time on, and you end up not doing, following through on what you hope to do with other people and help. So it's kind of just taking on less projects and focusing, more on the ones we do have, spending more time with those. I think that new projects come along. The first thing we look at is the theme and, pretty much what kind of game they're looking for. Is it a big game or a small game? I think small games are getting more and more appealing to us after the last few projects we've had. So we'd like to knock out a few smaller games in the future.
And if we get an offer that's not a cooperative game, we just throw it in the trash.
Brady does, yes.
Well, listen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been really good speaking to you and getting your insights. And we're obviously big fans, and we're looking forward to Street Masters. And then Epic, Awful Fantasy to follow. Thanks for coming on the show, guys. It's been great to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us, guys.